Okay, guys, we're going to look at the heart this week, and we're going to start out with just some basic structures of the heart, and then we'll move on to some more details. So what we're looking at right now is how the heart sits in the body. This muscle right here is the diaphragm, so the heart's going to sit right on top of the diaphragm. The part of the heart that sits on the diaphragm is called the base of the heart. It's the flat part that sits on that diaphragm. So if I take this off, you can see how flat it is underneath. The point of the heart is called the apex, and that's left ventricle there, and you can feel the largest contraction at that point. That, in some people who are real thin, you can actually even see this hitting their sternum when they lay down, and you can see their chest actually move because of that apex there. So looking at the heart from the outside, we can see a lot of blood vessels here. We have these two little flaps that kind of overhang the middle part. And then we've got a nice thick muscle in the middle. Now remember, the heart sits between the two lungs, which would be here. All of these small vessels and tubes are to the lungs. And is going to have a blood supply on its surface. It's going to send and receive blood from the chambers. And it has those four main chambers, and we'll talk about all of those in detail. The heart is covered with the visceral pericardium, and on the models, it's the shiny part. When you look at a wet heart, you'll also see a shiny layer on the outside of the heart. That's your visceral pericardium. We also call this layer the epicardium. So those two names are synonymous. That's that visceral layer of serosa that surrounds your organs. Now right here, you can see this white structure. It's been cut open, so you can actually see the heart underneath. But this is going to be the tough outer covering of the heart called the pericardium. Now the pericardium, what we typically call the pericardium, is going to actually be two layers. On the very outside, what you would see first if you stuck a pen through, or what you would hit first if you stuck a pen through, is going to be your fibrous pericardium. That's not part of the serosa, that's a separate layer. On the inside of that fibrous pericardium, so if I was looking at it from this direction, that's going to be your parietal serous pericardium, part of that serous membrane. And then your epicardium would cover the heart. This right here is mostly right ventricle. This is left ventricle here. This is the left auricle, which is going to cover the atrium, really kind of hang off the atrium. And this is the right auricle. These they look like ears, or ear auricles, which is why they have that name. These three great vessels here you need to know as well. This is the pulmonary trunk, which is blood leaving the right ventricle, heading towards the lungs. This is the aorta, and for you guys, you need to know the three different parts of the aorta. The aortic arch, the ascending aorta, sorry. This first part is ascending aorta. This is the aortic arch here, and then going down the back would be the descending aorta. This right here is superior vena cava. This is going to bring blood back to the heart from the superior part of the body and dump it into the right atrium. If we turn the heart around, we can see where the pulmonary trunk splits into right and left pulmonary arteries. Those are the darker blue ones. And then you can see your descending aorta as well. This is the trachea. We'll talk more about that when we do respiratory. Now we'll talk about some of the vessels giving rise to the superior vena cava. Notice that there's a Y shape here. These two big veins are bringing blood from the arm and the head and draining into the superior vena cava right here. Veins always dump into larger veins. Veins don't branch. They come together to form larger veins. So this large vein is called the brachiocephalic vein. Brachio meaning arm, cephalic meaning head, bringing blood from the arm and head. This is the right brachiocephalic vein. This is the left brachiocephalic vein going into the superior vena cava. Now, off the aortic arch, you have three large arteries that branch. Arteries branch into smaller and smaller arteries. One branch, two branches, three branches. One, two, three. Now, on the right side of the body, we have one artery trunk that's going to feed the head and the arm. This is called the brachiocephalic trunk, sort of like brachiocephalic vein. If trunk is in the name, it means that the artery is going to split. So the brachiocephalic trunk will split into the arm portion and the neck portion. Here's the neck portion, which is going to go straight up. This is the right common carotid artery. Here's the arm portion going to the right arm. This is the right subclavian artery. Now the difference is on the left side, because of the configuration of these vessels, those two branches, common carotid artery and subclavian artery, come off separately from the aortic arch. On the right side, it's brachiocephalic trunk, which splits into right common carotid artery, right subclavian artery. On the left side, they come off individually. You can see two arteries, one, two. This one's going to go up to the head, so this is your left common carotid artery, just like we had here on the right. And this one's going to go to the left arm. It looks like it's been broken off, but this is the left subclavian artery. There is no brachiocephalic trunk on the left, only on the right. Now down here we can see another large vessel here, and this is the vessel bringing blood back from the lungs. It's oxygenated, which is why it's red, and this is the pulmonary vein. Pulmonary artery, pulmonary vein. Now there's 4 pulmonary veins, and we'll look at that better on a different heart. Okay, now here's a little heart, but we can actually see the pulmonary veins pretty well on this one. Let's review first these vessels here. Pulmonary trunk. Pulmonary trunk is going to come up and split into your pulmonary arteries. So here's left pulmonary artery in blue, right pulmonary artery in blue. Here's your ascending aorta, which remember would come into the arch and then the descending. This is your superior vena cava. Right auricle, left auricle. If we open it up, right atrium, right ventricle, left atrium, left ventricle. If we flip this upside down on the back, again you can see your ascending aorta, superior vena cava, right pulmonary artery, left pulmonary artery. And then here you have 1, 2, even 3 on this side. 1, 2. You'll have at least 2 pulmonary veins on each side. So these would be upper left, lower left pulmonary vein, upper right, lower right pulmonary vein, or superior and inferior if you prefer. Pulmonary veins, pulmonary arteries. This right here is the left atrium. This here is the right atrium. And this hole is your inferior vena cava. It comes right up through the diaphragm and dumps into the right atrium. Now we also have some circulation of the heart muscle itself. Remember, you have right and left coronary arteries, which on this one you can't actually see, but we'll see those on another model. But you can see their branches. Left coronary artery is going to come off of the ascending aorta and then branch into the marginal artery, which is here down the side of the heart. And then it's going to course around to the back and then give off a branch that goes down in between the ventricles on the posterior side of the heart. So that's posterior interventricular artery. On the left side, we have left coronary artery that comes out and branches into anterior interventricular artery, which is the red one, and then continues around to the back of the heart as circumflex artery. The veins that run with them run with the arteries but have different names. This one right here is great cardiac vein with anterior interventricular artery running next to it. And great cardiac vein is going to drain blood and continue all the way around to the back. So it's going to run with circumflex artery as well. Running with the marginal artery is going to be the small cardiac vein. And the back side of the heart, running with the posterior interventricular artery, is the middle cardiac vein. Now all three of these veins are going to drain into a very large vein on the back of the heart called the coronary sinus. That's this guy right here. The coronary sinus is going to open up and drain all that blood right into the right atrium so it can mix with the general circulation. On the inside of the heart, between the atrium and the ventricles, you have your valves, your AV valves. This valve right here on the right side of the heart is your tricuspid valve. This valve on the left side of the heart is your bicuspid or mitral valve. These valves are held down by little strings right here called chorda tendineae. See all those little strings here? And those chorda tendineae are attached to these little finger-like muscles called papillary muscles. Papillary muscles. The valves between the ventricles and the great vessels are your semilunar valves. Here's one. Pulmonary trunk, right ventricle. The valve between those is your pulmonary valve. Between the left ventricle and your aorta is the aortic valve. We'll look at some of those other detailed structures on a bigger heart.